Welcome back to DRM News Podcast. We're doing a deep dive today into some pretty high-stakes diplomacy.
Oh, yeah.
The meeting between King Abdullah of Jordan and President Trump.
Right.
About the very uncertain future of Gaza.
It's fascinating. You've got Trump, known for his unorthodox approach to diplomacy, and King Abdullah trying to walk this diplomatic tightrope between this crucial alliance with the U.S. and his commitment to regional stability.
Yeah, and we have some pretty incredible sources for this deep dive. We have video footage of the meeting.
Wow.
Press briefings, expert analysis.
It's amazing.
It's like we're flies on the wall in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
But before we jump in, why should our listeners even care about this meeting?
Because the decisions that are made or not made here, they're going to impact millions of lives. We're talking about potential conflict displacement, the future of an entire region. This isn't just some abstract geopolitical game.
Okay, so let's set the scene. King Abdullah and Crown Prince Hussein arrive at the White House, greeted by President Trump. And immediately, reporters start grilling Trump about potential aid cuts to Jordan.
Oh, wow.
If they don't cooperate with his Gaza plan.
Yeah, you can cut the tension with a knife. Especially given Trump's past statements on the Middle East. Which haven't exactly been well received.
Not really.
In the Arab world.
Right.
And then you add to that this fragile Israel-Hamas ceasefire.
Right.
And Hamas's statement that they're halting the release of Israeli hostages.
Oh, wow.
Over alleged ceasefire violations. Things are incredibly tense.
So what exactly is this controversial plan that has everyone on edge?
Well, Trump's proposal is for the U.S. to take control of Gaza.
Wow.
Relocate the residents potentially to Jordan and Egypt. And then develop it into what he calls a Riviera of the Middle East.
A Riviera. That seems a little optimistic. Given the current situation.
It raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? Particularly because Trump has said things like, we don't have to buy Gaza. There's nothing to buy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he seems to believe that the U.S. has the authority to just take control.
Wow.
But critics argue that this completely ignores international law, Palestinian rights, and the historical precedent of displacement. Which is a very sensitive issue in this region.
So how does King Abdullah even respond to all of this? He's in a particularly tricky position, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He's trying to balance diplomacy with protecting his own country's interests. So he praises the U.S.-Jordan relationship, but also emphasizes that any solution has to benefit everyone. It's a real diplomatic tightrope walk.
There's this one moment where King Abdullah offers to immediately take in 2,000 sick Palestinian children.
Oh, wow.
Even Trump seemed surprised by that. He called it a beautiful gesture.
That moment, I think, really highlights the human cost of this conflict. The real people who are caught in this geopolitical tug of war. It also, I think, underscores King Abdullah's commitment to the Palestinian people. And it's not just words. After the meeting, both he and Jordan's foreign minister, Ayman Safadi, reiterated their opposition to displacing Palestinians.
Okay, so it sounds like a head-to-head. You know, we have Trump pushing for relocation. And King Abdullah advocating for Palestinian rights and regional stability. What are the potential consequences of this clash of perspectives?
I think the potential for increased tension is very real. If Trump follows through with aid cuts or forced relocation, it could completely unravel the ceasefire. And remember, both Trump and Netanyahu have set this Saturday deadline for Hamas to release Israeli captives or face renewed attacks. Things could escalate very quickly.
And wouldn't ignoring the right of return further inflame tensions?
It likely would. The right of return is the Palestinian demand to return to the homes and land they were expelled from or fled during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. And it's central to their identity. And their demands for justice, ignoring this, as Trump's plan seems to do, would be highly inflammatory.
It seems like there's a disconnect between Trump's focus on real estate, building hotels, creating jobs, and the reality on the ground. Palestinians have deep ties to their land.
They do.
And they've resisted displacement for decades.
Precisely, and that's clearly demonstrated by the Palestinians who used the recent ceasefire to return to northern Gaza. Even though their homes were largely destroyed, they walked back determined to stay on their land.
Wow.
It's a powerful statement about their connection to their homeland.
This meeting has certainly laid bare some starkly different views on the future of Gaza.
Yeah.
But to truly understand the complexity of this situation, We need to zoom out a bit.
Okay.
And look at the wider regional context, don't we?
Absolutely. You mentioned Egypt and Saudi Arabia. They're both key players in this, and both have, a history of complex relations with the Palestinian issue.
Right, and both rely heavily on U.S. aid, which puts them in a difficult position when Trump threatens to cut that aid if they don't fall in line with his plan.
Right.
What are the specifics of that aid, and what would the impact be if it were withdrawn?
Well, the U.S. provides billions of dollars in military and economic aid to both countries annually.
Right.
For Egypt, it's about strengthening their military capabilities.
Okay.
And supporting their role in regional security, especially in the Sinai Peninsula,
Right.
which borders Israel and Gaza.
Yeah.
For Jordan, the aid helps maintain their economic stability.
Okay.
And their ability to host a large Palestinian refugee population.
Yeah.
A legacy of past conflicts.
Right.
Cutting this aid would have significant consequences for both countries, potentially weakening their economies and destabilizing the region further.
And speaking of history, the idea of resettling Palestinians in neighboring Arab countries isn't new, is it?
It's not. Similar proposals have been floated before, and they've always been met with resistance.
Yeah.
Palestinians see it as an attempt to deny them their right of return and undermine their aspirations for an independent state.
So if Trump's plan is a non-starter for many, what does this alternate plan from Egypt and other Arab countries actually involve?
Well, the details are still emerging, but it seems to focus on rebuilding Gaza without displacement.
Okay.
Think investing in infrastructure, creating economic opportunities, and making Gaza a viable place for Palestinians to live and thrive.
That sounds more in line with King Abdullah's vision of a solution that benefits everyone.
Right.
But rebuilding Gaza is a massive undertaking.
It is.
How do they plan to achieve this, especially given the level of devastation from the recent conflict and the deep political divisions?
It will certainly be challenging. It's not just about physical reconstruction.
Yeah.
It's about addressing the psychological trauma, the shattered economy, the bunking families. It would require a concerted long-term international effort and a willingness to address the underlying political issues that led to the conflict in the first place.
And all of this is happening while the current ceasefire is hanging by a thread.
Right.
We've got Trump and Netanyahu setting this Saturday deadline for Hamas to release Israeli captives. Or else what? More airstrikes.
Yeah.
A ground invasion.
It's a dangerous game of brinkmanship. Both sides have shown they're willing to use force, and the consequences for civilians caught in the crossfire would be devastating.
Right.
And the fact that both Trump and Netanyahu have set this deadline just days before the Israeli election raises concerns that this is driven more by political maneuvering than by a genuine desire for peace.
So we've got this incredibly volatile situation in Gaza.
Yes.
A controversial U.S. plan, a fragile ceasefire, and a looming deadline. How could all of this impact the wider region?
The Middle East is often described as a powder keg.
Yeah.
And any escalation in Gaza could easily ignite tensions elsewhere. We could see a spillover of violence into neighboring countries, a resurgence of extremist groups, and a further deterioration of relations between Israel and the Arab world. The potential consequences are far-reaching and incredibly concerning.
It's a lot to unpack.
Okay.
And it's easy to get lost in the political maneuvering and the talk of plans and deadlines. But we can't lose sight of the human cost of this conflict.
Exactly. We've talked about the Palestinians returning to their destroyed homes.
Right.
But their experiences go far beyond that single image. To truly understand the situation, we need to hear their voices, their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future.
Because ultimately, it's their lives that are at stake in this conflict.
And their perspectives are crucial to understanding the complexity of the situation and finding a path towards a just and lasting peace. What are their stories?
Right.
How are they navigating this incredibly complex and often dangerous reality?
That's the question we need to explore further. We've talked about the political plans and the potential for wider conflict. But as you said, it's crucial to remember the human side of this story.
Exactly. We can't just talk about Gaza as a piece on a chessboard. These are real people with families, hopes, and fears.
Yeah, and one thing that really stands out from our sources is the resilience of the Palestinian people. Even in the face of incredible hardship, they find ways to rebuild their lives, create communities, and find moments of joy.
Yeah, that resilience is rooted in a deep connection to their land and a belief in their right to self-determination.
Right.
It's what drives them to return to their destroyed homes, to rebuild even when the future seems uncertain.
It's a stark contrast to the idea of simply relocating them to create a Riviera.
Yeah.
It highlights the disconnect between those grand political visions and the lived experiences of Palestinians.
You're right. It's a reminder that we can't just impose solutions from the outside. We need to, listen to the voices of Palestinians, understand their aspirations, and support their right to determine their own future.
So what are some of the things that Palestinians are saying about their hopes and fears for the future?
Our sources highlight a range of perspectives. Some express a longing for peace and stability, a chance to rebuild their lives without the constant threat of violence. Others talk about the importance of preserving their cultural heritage and identity in the face of displacement and occupation.
And there's that deep desire for a just resolution to the conflict. One that recognizes their right to self-determination and a homeland.
Absolutely. The right of return remains central to their demands for justice.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely that any solution that ignores this will be accepted by the Palestinian people.
It seems like the path forward is incredibly complex, with so many competing interests and deeply held beliefs. But is there any hope for a lasting peace in the region?
I believe there's always hope. But it requires a fundamental shift in perspective. We need to move away from zero-sum thinking and embrace a solution that recognizes the humanity and rights of all involved.
That means listening to the voices of Palestinians.
Yes.
Understanding their history and aspirations.
Yes.
And working towards a future where they can live in peace and security alongside their neighbors.
It also requires holding leaders accountable for their actions.
Right.
And pushing for policies that prioritize diplomacy and conflict resolution over military solutions.
It's a challenging path forward.
It is.
But one that's worth striving for. The stories of resilience and hope that we've encountered in this deep dive remind us of the human cost of this conflict and the urgency of finding a just and lasting peace.
As we conclude this deep dive, I think the key takeaway is this. The future of Gaza and the wider region depends on our collective commitment to justice, equality, and human dignity. Let's use this knowledge to advocate for a better future for all involved.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex and ever-evolving situation in Gaza. We hope this has given you a better understanding of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those important conversations going.